Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins are living through one of those moments in the NFL season that tests not only the structure of a team, but also the identity of a franchise that has been carefully constructed piece by piece under the watchful eye of head coach Mike McDaniel. The big headline out of Miami this week is the return of a familiar face. Wide receiver Cedric Wilson Jr., who rejoins the Dolphins after being signed off the New Orleans Saints practice squad. For many fans, this move feels like déjà vu, as Wilson was part of the Dolphins roster in 2022 and 2023, working directly under McDaniel during those first 2 years of his tenure. But the timing of his return is no coincidence, nor is it a move made out of nostalgia. Instead, it is born out of necessity, sparked by a devastating piece of news that shook not only Dolphins fans, but the entire NFL landscape. Tyreek Hill, the most electric playmaker in Miami's offense, tore his ACL in the Monday night clash against the New York Jets. Suddenly, the Dolphins, a team built around speed, explosiveness, and versatility in the passing game, were left without their biggest star. And in moments like this, a coach has to act quickly, decisively, and with a vision for how to keep the machine running. Mike McDaniel wasted little time in making his intentions clear. Cedric Wilson Jr. was not just any available receiver. He was a player who already understood the complexities of McDaniel's offensive schemes, who had chemistry with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and who brought a level of consistency and reliability that McDaniel believes can help the Dolphins weather the storm. When asked about the decision to bring Wilson back, McDaniel's words were deliberate and filled with confidence. His consistency and playmaking ability to play with or without the ball, McDaniel explained. He played to a high standard here, and as we looked at all of his tapes since, he hasn't lost a step, in our opinion. For Dolphins fans still reeling from the loss of Hill, those words carry a sense of calm. McDaniel has always been the kind of coach who sees opportunities in adversity, and Wilson's signing feels like one of those moments where McDaniel's belief in culture and familiarity outweighs the risk of introducing a completely new piece into the system. Of course, the reality is that Wilson will not be an immediate savior. For those expecting to see him suit up this Sunday against the Carolina Panthers, McDaniel was quick to temper expectations. Wilson, who recently underwent a minor procedure, will not practice this week and will likely need at least another week before being fully integrated back into the lineup. That delay might feel frustrating to fans eager for reinforcements, but in truth, this move is about the long-term picture rather than a quick fix. The Dolphins are preparing for a marathon, not a sprint, and Wilson's role will become more significant as the season wears on and as the team adjusts to life without Hill on the field. It's worth remembering that Cedric Wilson's NFL story has always been one of patience, persistence, and maximizing opportunities. Drafted in the 6th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, he entered the league with little fanfare. Players picked that late are often considered long shots, but Wilson carved out a role for himself through hard work, discipline, and an ability to make key plays when called upon. Over the course of 83 career regular season games, he has accumulated 1,480 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns, numbers that may not jump off the stat sheet, but reflect steady production and reliability. For a Dolphins team suddenly desperate for depth at wide receiver, those qualities matter more than ever. When you step back and consider the bigger picture, Miami's decision to turn to Wilson rather than combing the free agent market for a big splash makes perfect sense. Chemistry in the NFL is not built overnight. A receiver might be physically gifted, but if he doesn't understand the system or struggles to sync with the quarterback, the entire offense can sputter. Wilson, having already been in the McDaniel system for 2 seasons, provides that rare combination of familiarity and readiness. He doesn't need weeks of adjustment to learn terminology or timing. He knows the Dolphins' playbook, understands the spacing McDaniel demands from his receivers, and has already proven he can execute at the level Miami needs. That kind of institutional memory is invaluable, especially at a time when Miami's depth chart is stretched thin. The emotional layer of this move also cannot be ignored. Losing Tyreek Hill is more than just losing production. Hill was the face of the Dolphins' offensive identity. He embodied the cheetah speed, the explosive yards after catch, and the swagger that made Miami one of the most feared offenses in the NFL. Replacing that is, frankly, impossible. But what McDaniel and the Dolphins are signaling with Wilson's signing is that they are not going to panic or deviate from the system they've built. Instead, they are leaning into the players they trust, players who can uphold the culture and standards that McDaniel has carefully crafted over his tenure. In many ways, Wilson's return is about continuity as much as it is about filling a roster spot. For Wilson himself, this is an opportunity that could redefine the later stages of his career. At 29 years old, he is no longer considered a young prospect. But he is at that sweet spot where experience and athletic ability can merge into a valuable role player, perhaps even a difference maker if given the chance. Returning to Miami gives him a platform to show that he is more than just depth. He can be a reliable target, a veteran presence in the locker room, and someone who can help keep the Dolphins' playoff aspirations alive despite the setback. Every NFL player dreams of moments where preparation meets opportunity, and this feels like one of those crossroads for Wilson. From a tactical perspective, the Dolphins' offense will now have to adapt. Without Hill, defenses will no longer tilt their coverages in the same way, which means Tua Tagovailoa will have to spread the ball around more evenly. Jalen Waddle will naturally step into the role of primary playmaker, but defenses will key on him heavily. That's where someone like Wilson becomes important. His ability to run crisp routes, find soft spots in zone coverage, and make contested catches could serve as a crucial pressure valve for Tua when the pocket collapses or when the first read is taken away. In a league where games are often decided by a handful of plays, having someone like Wilson who can convert third downs or stretch a drive can make all the difference. The narrative also intertwines with the Dolphins' broader goals this season. Miami is not just fighting for playoff contention. They are fighting to prove that their style of football, fast, creative, and bold, can succeed at the highest level. Doubters have long pointed to their struggles against elite teams or questioned whether their high-octane offense can hold up in December and January. Losing Hill only adds fuel to those critiques. But in true Mike McDaniel fashion, the message remains consistent. Trust the process, trust the culture, and trust the players who have already proven themselves within the system. And that is why Cedric Wilson Jr.'s return is more than just a transaction on the waiver wire. It's a statement about resilience, about how the Dolphins plan to move forward without their superstar, and about the belief that the collective can still thrive even when an individual piece is lost. Wilson now steps into a spotlight that may not have been designed for him, but could very well become the defining chapter of his career. For Miami fans, it's a reminder that football is not just about the stars, but about the depth, the preparation, and the belief that anyone on the roster can rise when called upon. As the season moves forward, all eyes will be on how the Dolphins adapt without Tyreek Hill. The pressure is immense, the stakes are high, and the margins for error are razor thin. But with Mike McDaniel at the helm, Tua leading the charge, and now Cedric Wilson Jr. re-entering the fold, this Dolphins team has an opportunity to turn a potential disaster into a story of resilience. Sometimes the NFL is not about the flashiest move, but about the smartest one. And bringing back Wilson might just be one of those quietly brilliant decisions that pays dividends when the season reaches its defining moments. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? In a week already filled with dramatic twists and turns across the NFL landscape, the Miami Dolphins find themselves unexpectedly at the center of a brewing storm, one ignited not by a player, not by a front office shakeup, but by a microphone and a moment of unfiltered honesty. Anthony Weaver, the recently appointed defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, took the podium in what was supposed to be a routine media availability. Instead, what unfolded was nothing short of explosive. Weaver, known for his straightforward approach and gritty mindset cultivated during his time as a player and seasoned coaching stints with teams like the Ravens, Texans, Jets, and most recently the Browns, delivered a press conference that quickly spiraled into one of the most talked-about moments in South Florida sports media. What caught everyone off guard wasn't just the content of what he said, it was the way he said it. Calm, composed, but with a fire just beneath the surface, Weaver dropped a few sentences that seemed to freeze the room. Without naming names, he made it abundantly clear that something behind the scenes is not sitting right with him. referring vaguely to the culture that needs changing and a need for real accountability, not just PR buzzwords. Weaver cast a long shadow over the current internal dynamics of the Dolphins' locker room. The tension was palpable. Journalists exchanged glances. Cameras zoomed in. Was he calling out the players? The head coach? The front office? Or perhaps, in a more subtle way, was he trying to set the tone for a defensive revolution in a team that's long struggled to find consistent identity on that side of the ball? The Dolphins' defense, despite flashes of brilliance last season, was marked by inconsistency. One week, they'd be shutting down a top-tier offense. The next, giving up critical third-down conversions to backup quarterbacks. Fans were frustrated, and the noise was growing. Enter Weaver, a man who's seen the trenches both as a player and coach. During his days in Baltimore, he learned under the imposing legacy of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. In Houston, he dealt with the chaos of roster turnover and instability. Now in Miami, many believed he was brought in to stabilize, to instill discipline, and to toughen up a defense that had often looked more finesse than ferocious. But no one expected him to light a match this early. And yet, that's exactly what he did. Weaver's words, though carefully chosen, suggested deep-rooted issues, possibly stemming from previous regimes or current internal divides. He spoke about players needing to want it more than their social media metrics, and coaches needing to teach, not just manage egos. The football world knows that kind of language. It's code. It's the kind of thing usually said behind closed doors. And for Weaver to bring it to the public stage? That's bold. That's the kind of move that either unifies a locker room or splits it right down the middle. The whispers started immediately after the press conference ended. Who was he really talking about? Was this aimed at a certain star cornerback known for his brash online persona? Or maybe the linebacking core that underperformed despite high expectations? Some even wondered if this was an indirect shot at the head coach, Mike McDaniel, whose offensive genius has at times left the defense playing catch-up in both preparation and execution. But one thing is clear, Weaver isn't afraid. Not of ruffling feathers, not of media backlash, not of making waves in a city that thrives on drama. Longtime NFL insiders started buzzing. This wasn't the typical coach speak. This wasn't, we need to execute better, or we'll watch the tape and adjust. This was raw. This was emotional. This was a man who, just a few months into his tenure, was laying down a gauntlet. And whether intentional or not, it signals a dramatic shift in tone for the Dolphins' defense. If Weaver's voice is going to be this loud off the field, you can bet he expects his defense to scream even louder on it. The Dolphins organization, meanwhile, has remained officially silent. No statements, no clarifications. That silence only adds fuel to the fire. Because in the NFL, silence often means internal discussions, tense meetings behind glass doors, phone calls between executives, and uncomfortable conversations in private offices. Is this a wake-up call? A challenge to the locker room to step up? Or is it a sign that Weaver may already be clashing with some of the Dolphins' entrenched leadership? Whatever it is, it's not going away. Local media in Miami has latched onto the story like sharks to blood in the water. Sports radio hosts are dissecting every syllable. Fans are split. Some see Weaver as a much-needed voice of truth in an organization that's danced around mediocrity for too long. Others worry he may have overstepped, risking locker room unity before a single regular season snap has been played under his watch. Either way, the narrative is now out there, and in a league where perception often becomes reality, Weaver's image is being molded in real time. But maybe that's exactly what he wants. Maybe this is chess, not checkers. Because Weaver knows how this league works. He's been around. He's been in the meeting rooms where politics often outweigh performance. Maybe this press conference was his way of claiming space, asserting control, and planting a flag for the kind of defensive identity he wants Miami to have. A hard-nosed, no-nonsense, old-school mentality where results speak louder than reputations. And if that's the case, well, then mission accomplished. Because you can be sure that every defensive player wearing teal and orange heard those words loud and clear. This wasn't just media fodder. This was a challenge, a declaration. The new sheriff in town doesn't care about past accolades or Instagram followers. He cares about tape, about tackling, about who's going to hit the hardest and think the fastest when the lights come on. As the Dolphins prepare for the remainder of the preseason and look to tighten up before the regular season grind, all eyes are now on the defense. On Weaver, on how the team responds. Will they rally behind him, embracing his blunt truth and turning it into fire on the field? Or will fractures deepen, with egos bruised and lines drawn? The next few weeks will tell us everything. But make no mistake, the fuse has been lit in Miami. And whether that leads to an explosion of dominance or a meltdown of dysfunction is entirely up to how the locker room, coaching staff, and organization respond. One thing is certain, Anthony Weaver has arrived. And he didn't come quietly. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.